Hello, everybody, and welcome to the seventh episode of the Magenta Mix Podcast. I'm Gary Magenta. I'm your host and chief pot stirrer. Today, we are mixing it up with Ross Freedman. He is the co-founder of Origin, a serial entrepreneur, and just a really cool dude. He and his team at Origin are shaping the future of analytics, AI, and automation. Ross is a dynamic entrepreneur. He has an undeniable track record of conceiving, launching, and running businesses that make a difference. So get ready to tap in to your inner entrepreneur and unlock the secrets to building purpose, culture, and strategy in your next business venture, whether you are an entrepreneur or an entrepreneur. So pop on your headphones, pour a glass of whatever, and let's mix it up with Ross Freedman. Ross Freedman, welcome. It is good to see you.
Good to see you too, Gary.
Thank you. Thanks for taking the time. Thanks for being with us. As I mentioned in the introduction, we get an opportunity to talk to quite a few executives from Fortune companies, but it is this rare opportunity to talk with an entrepreneur like yourself, even what I would call a serial entrepreneur like yourself. So I want to kick off with, what was the pivotal moment or those moments that really ignited, I don't know, your spirit or interest in being an entrepreneur?
Well, first off, thank you for having me on this podcast today. I'm really happy to be here. My entrepreneurial journey actually started in college at UW-Madison. I was a business and information systems major in the mid-90s, just as the internet was coming into our daily lives. And it was a really awesome time because it reminds me a lot of today, where AI is permeating into our lives, and it's changing the way we live and the way we work. And I actually remember the specific time that it clicked for me. My buddy and I actually convinced one of our professors to let us, instead of taking statistics for 3 credits, we would build an application for one of the departments of the university. And we spent a semester doing that. And when we finished that project and we got to see the users of the application using that application to be more productive and the department to be more efficient, it was at that moment, it was very fulfilling for us to see that. And it helped me develop my passion, which is to reimagine business with technology. And yeah, go ahead.
I just want to clarify, when you said when it clicked for me, just tell us what the it was.
The it for me was being able to actually be creative the way we were creative as technologists and programmers, and help people and organizations be more efficient and effective.
So we can use technology to help organizations be more efficient and more effective, and individuals
and teams and entire organizations.
Yeah. So it's interesting because you've already mentioned AI, and there's this expression that I'm sure you've heard going around, which is when people ask, will my job be replaced by AI? The answer is no, but it'll be replaced by someone who knows how to leverage AI. Have you heard that one?
Yes, and I think that there will be some people that need to upskill and reskill as it relates to AI. But for the most part, I'm very optimistic that it's going to have a positive impact on our economy. And our mission at Origin is to augment human intelligence, not replace it.
Yeah, so let's talk about Origin. When you and I first crossed paths, you were leading RightPoint, which I believe you successfully sold a few years back. Is that right?
That's correct. We sold in 2019 to a company called Genpact.
So I think for some of us who've been following you, and for full disclosure, I think prior to that, my younger son was working within your organization, although you and I had not met at the time. I think that the popular belief was, he's young, he's done this great deal, go, right off into the sunset. And then I hear your name percolating around the business circles in Chicago again, that not only haven't you ridden off into the sunset, but you've now co-founded a new company called Origin. And I mentioned in the intro how Origin is really focused on analytics, AI, and automation. Tell us why you've sort of jumped from this great success of RightPoint to co-founding Origin. What is behind that, and what are you focused on at Origin?
Thanks for that question. We have this fundamental belief that every company is either a data company today or will need to reinvent themselves to become one. And so what we've seen over the past 25 years is that companies are implementing systems to run their business. And what's happened as a byproduct of that is they're sitting on troves of data, and they're looking for ways to monetize that data, create insights on that data. And as you correctly outlined our service offerings, the 3 A's, analytics, AI, and automation, everyone's trying to figure out how to develop those insights, monetize it, create AI experiences for both employees and customers. And we're doing that through proof of value assessments, creating proof of concepts. And then from an automation perspective, it's all about automating manual, human, error-prone processes with AI and technology.
You're mentioning AI quite a bit here, and I have my largest client, which is a Fortune 50 um, uh, company, who has their own version of AI specifically for their organization. So it has a focus on their industry and also has some guidelines, if you will, on how they use it, what they have access to, and what they don't. Can you speak to that at all in organizations who are adopting AI but customizing it for their company?
Yeah, I think it's important to understand there's the AI we use in our daily life, like ChatGPT, and there's AI that we're going to see at work. They definitely overlap and intersect. But what companies are doing is they're building out their own private AI models and language models and putting techniques, processes, and technologies in place to help them run their business better. That could be helping them build it into their products, into their employee experience, or even their customer experience.
Yeah, very interesting, fascinating how it's AI has launched and is so quickly being adopted and customized. It's amazing to watch. And I will just say that for me, it is a daily part of my life at the Magenta Mix. We are a really small, lean organization. And I don't know that I will say an hour within the day that I'm not leveraging it for something, including the questions I'm using to ask you today. Kidding-ish. Okay,
There's
so
never been a more exciting time than right now, I think, in the world with technology and what's happening and the way it's going to change our lives. So I'm with you on that.
it is. Well, every episode of the podcast, Ross, we talk about purpose, strategy, and culture. These are three key drivers in any organization. And one of the reasons why I was so excited to have you as a guest today is, as I mentioned before, we've talked to so many executives from really, really large companies. Global or Fortune companies. And I want to hear from someone who's a serial entrepreneur who grows a business from a few people in a room to mega to sale, how you think about purpose, strategy, and culture. So let's start with purpose. How do you define purpose and how do you integrate it into the daily thinking, the DNA of your organizations?
Well, I think it's the same whether you're a Fortune 500 company or a small company. I don't think it changes. And we've always defined purpose as why we get out of bed in the morning. And I think it needs to be something that hits people both on a emotional and visceral level. The litmus test that we've always used is, how excited are you to come into work in the morning? And how much of a pit in your stomach do you have on a Sunday night before that long week ahead? And, I think it's important to get to that sort of emotional feeling that people have about their job. Do they see what they're doing as connected to a bigger purpose, something bigger themselves, bigger than the company that they work for? And I think it's really important for founders to be unifiers, people that bring customers, employees around a common vision and purpose to have everyone moving in the right direction. And they need to over communicate that in every opportunity that they have.
So I'm with you. I'm taking notes as you're talking, Ross, and I'm with you on the purposes why we get up in the morning. One of the other ways that I talk about that is I get to do fill in the blank. I get to, or I would do this even if I weren't getting paid. It's that exciting, or it's that much of a game changer out in the universe that I get to do this and bring this to the world. And so I understand your position as an entrepreneur. I'm in my third company. Two were in my 20s and one in my 50s that I've started up. And I've always felt, even in my former life with 21 years at Root, I always got to get up and do something. I feel like I've always been fortunate in that. But I've also either been on the leadership team or been in an owner position. How do you drive that connectivity, that emotional connection with people who may not have that same leadership position or the same financial potential in the organization?
we've always had a mantra: ignite your passion, right? And whether you're a programmer who just wants to write elegant code to solve a really great business problem, or a data scientist that's looking for that needle in a haystack, it's all about figuring out what your passion is. And like you said, whether you're getting paid for it or not, you would love to do that kind of work. And if you can connect that person's passion to the organization's purpose, that's the goal that you're trying to strive for.
I'm just going to say that you and I are so closely aligned. You and I have never had a conversation this long in the years that we've been familiar that the other one exists, right? This last 10 minutes is the longest conversation we've ever had. That is 100% my belief as well. And I just want to emphasize it for our listeners and viewers. If you can connect the individual's passion to the company's purpose, you have a emotionally and intellectually engaged employee forever. And if you can't, you've got a worker for a period of time.
Exactly.
Yeah, we are really well connected on that. And I think that's a really good segue into culture. The way we look at it at the Magenta Mix, Ross, is that purpose is that sort of North Star. It is why you get up. And culture is really the gas in the engine, right? You've got to have some gas to drive there. And strategy, of course, being the roadmap on how to get there. And we'll get to that in a bit. But we know that culture plays a really significant role in shaping a company's success. It's the fuel or it's the blocker. And for those of people who are listening, Ross is shaking his head. Yes, we're in agreement on this, it seems. So just walk us through your approach as an entrepreneur who starts with a few people thinking about an idea and grows a company. Walk us through your approach to cultivating a strong and cohesive company culture. Do you wait for a culture to sort of show up and grow organically, or is it something that you're intentionally creating right from the start?
It's something we intentionally create right from the start. We had an individual at our former company who was our director of people potential. And she had used the analogy that culture is like a garden. We either tend to it and it sort of is very intentional and purposeful and it becomes beautiful over time, or it grows like a weed because you're unintentional about it. And so we've always been very intentional about cultivating and nurturing our culture in a way that was very much tied to our values as individuals, as leaders, et cetera. And I think there's also ways to be intentionally unintentional. So at the macro level, we were very intentional about our overall strategy, purpose, culture, et cetera. But when we had specific business units or different offices, we had subcultures inside of the larger culture. And we were intentionally very hands off as it relates to defining what their subculture should be. As long as we knew it was connected to the larger culture, our Dallas office or our LA office could have separate subcultures. And so we were intentionally hands off and letting them really define the culture at their local level.
You said something that I just want to highlight for people. Well, first, before I do that, anytime you have more than one location, you likely have more than one culture. And as long as they ladder up to each other, sure, regionally, geographically, you do have different styles, and it's great as long as we're really close first cousins or siblings,
Right.
that we're not too distant there, and we're not fifth cousins twice removed. I agree. But what really triggered or sparked for me was when you said we're basing the culture on the values of us as leaders. And again, an area where we're really aligned and that I want to stress for our listeners, and that is companies' logos can't define a culture. It is actually the leaders and what they value that is the origin, no pun intended, the origin of what a culture is. Because as leaders, it's up to us to be very demonstrative in our behaviors. Ultimately, culture, the way we define it at the Magenta Mix is, well, what are the actions and behaviors that are demonstrative that your leaders at every level are bringing forward? The observable behaviors that no matter where I sit in the organization, if I never talk to you, I could look up and see the way things are done here. So having those values of your leaders become the culture of the organization, I think is key. And so many organizations are not, too many organizations are not considering that. What's important to us as leaders? How do we demonstrate that consistently so that others understand without it ever having to be written on a poster in a break room what our culture is? Just give me some thoughts there.
Yeah, everyone talks about the quote "culture eats strategy for lunch," and it's overused. I think that a lot of people think culture is the happy hours, the ping pong table in the office, and as you said, it's how we behave. But I would take it one step further. It's not just how we behave; it's how we treat one another as colleagues. It's not the surface level things. It gets very, very deep, and it's really about the way the organization works on a day to day basis. And for us, we knew that we needed to hire a very specific type of person that really met our core values as a business. And the word we typically used was entrepreneur. Someone that was a self-starter, someone that didn't want a lot of structure. They wanted that white space opportunity to go off and do something big. And those people became the stewards of our culture. So it actually wasn't just the leaders of the organization who were trying to foster and nurture that culture. It was the next level down and the next level down after that who are these stewards of our culture who were maintaining and growing and nurturing our culture every single day.
And you said something that's very key, hiring for culture fit. That's my paraphrase of what you said. Just respond to this, if you would, Ross. You can build skills. You can teach somebody an industry or a business, but you can't necessarily train for a fit in the business.
People are wired a specific way based upon the way they were brought up, their former experiences, and you can't change people. We've tried to change people and it hasn't worked. You need to hire people that are already pre-wired a certain way, who already have the same set of values as you. Because while you can teach people new things, I do believe people can, grow in their career. You can't change their DNA.
So I think that oftentimes for me, that equates to our personal lives. We end up with partners or significant others, spouses, where we share values. We have close friendships with those that we share values. And when we think about the workplace, we're spending more time with those people than we are with our significant others and our close friends. Our values have to align in order for this to work out.
Absolutely. I mean, I have had a business partner since the day I graduated college. It was the same person I went through that 3 credit initiative with, where I came up with my sort of purpose in life. And, for me, it's the same sort of relationship I have with my business partner as I do with my wife. It's that commonality around how we think, how we, behave, how we treat each other, and how we approach, problem solving.
Yeah, they're probably the two of the biggest relationships in your life outside of the rest of your family. Your partner, I'm sure, gets as much of your attention as your family does.
Sometimes more.
Sometimes more. I heard something recently. I always talk about the connection between the employee experience and customer experience. And the other day I heard something that really just gave me my new line here. And that is, our company's behaviors, our employees' behaviors, is our customer's experience. Can you speak to that?
There's no question that employees are brand ambassadors. They are the lifeblood of a company. When you think of what a company is, it's people, process, and technology. And a lot of people focus on the process and the technology, but when you have an experience with a company, it's all the different points that they touch, and many of them are with people. And if those experience points are negative or positive, it will have a direct impact on the customer experience based upon that employee and how they interact.
No question. No question. I'm just curious, at Origin, who is your customer?
Our customer is typically a Fortune 500 person, and within that, it's typically the chief information officer or someone that's in charge of a line of business where they're trying to figure out their data strategy.
So you have a CIO in a Fortune company who's the decision maker.
Yes, primarily.
Primarily. And then who would your team interface with? The technology team at that company?
Usually it's a technology team as a liaison to the business team. So the business is really the one who's really sponsoring the project, who's basically got the vision for what they want to create. And we're working through IT to be able to help that customer accomplish their goals.
And I'm assuming there's a user experience associated with that as well?
Absolutely. I mean, it's not just technology. It has to be used by humans. So we have a big experience component that makes sure that what we develop is usable and fits in line with how a human would interact with it.
Yeah, it's awesome. So let's just talk, if you don't mind, we'll switch the conversation to strategy. We've talked a bit about purpose, a little bit more on culture. Let's talk about strategy. Creating a successful strategy really requires a deep understanding of things like marketplace dynamics, in your case, changing technology, user experience, as we just talked about. So, how do you formulate a strategy? And maybe even more importantly, how do you align your team with a strategy? Because what we know is that many companies spend an inordinate amount of time and money creating an A strategy, and they don't do a great job on engaging their team in it. So the expression I like is a B or C strategy is more effective when executed well than an A strategy that never leaves the boardroom table.
One thing I think is it's really important to get out of the office and talk to clients, team members, partners, bankers, anyone that's in that microcosm of your industry, because they all have a unique perspective on what's happening, what those trends are. And unless you're in touch with those trends, you can't make bets. You don't have your pulse on what's happening. So I think the most important thing is to have those conversations, listen very carefully, have empathy in those conversations to understand where those people are coming from, to really get to the root cause of the issues that are happening in that industry. And then once you have that knowledge, you can make bets and you can start to pivot your business in one direction or another and sort of test and learn new products, services, and solutions.
So, if I understand you correctly, and tell me if I didn't get it right, when you're building strategy, you're out there listening to the VOC, voice of customer, what they want and need. Is that right?
That's where we start.
That's where you start. So, when you bring that back in house, how are you aligning your leadership team on it and connecting everyone else in the business to it?
I think it's the founder or CEO's job to put something on paper and say, here's what the straw man looks like based upon everything we've heard and seen in the market. And then you can start to riff on that and say, okay, leadership team, everyone's got a different perspective, sales, finance, HR, et cetera. How do you perceive what I put in front of you as a straw man starting point? Let's begin to iterate on this and bring in these different perspectives to make it sort of holistic and refined.
So, you're getting the voices of your team to respond to what you've heard in the marketplace, internalize that, tweak it to make sure that we can respond to it correctly. And I'm assuming that in that process, that's creating the ownership and the buy-in necessary for every team member to feel like I'm a part of this. Am I
It's
getting that right?
You got it exactly right. I think it's the CEO's job to take the initiative to put it out there, but it's everyone's job to build upon it.
Yeah, nice. Thank you for that. This idea that you've been creating companies from a very young age, even coming right out of undergrad, if I understood that correctly. Um, Origin, is that all you're working on these days, or do you have your hand in some other things as well?
So my business partner and I also have a firm called 367 Ventures, where we advise, mentor, and invest in early stage founders. So one of those companies is Origin. We are sort of self-investing in ourselves, but we also invest in companies in a variety of industries. Mostly what we're looking for is a coachable founder and a group of people that understand how to use technology to solve a very complex problem.
So, as you're looking for a coachable founder, that just sparks my curiosity. And I'm hoping that some of our listeners here are either entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs or want to be and would really benefit from your answer to this. What do you consider coachable? Because people who are creators and founders are oftentimes visionary and have tunnel vision, in my experience. What do you consider coachable?
Someone that's humble, someone that has humility. They don't have it all figured out. They know they don't have it all figured out, and they're looking for help. Yes, I've talked to a lot of founders who think they know exactly what they need to do, but many of them don't. And the ones that have a really strong vision but are open to new ideas and perspectives, those are the ones that we want to work with, and those are the ones we think are going to be very successful.
So you need a combination of someone who's a visionary, who really has a dream, believes that it's possible and achievable, and it's balanced with the desire to be a continuous learner and some humility.
Exactly right. And that's not usually found in one person. So those are, people that it's hard to find someone that has both of those in the same sort of brain.
Yes, I think that I see those qualities shared on a leadership team. One person has some
Right.
of those attributes and another person has another, and they're able to keep themselves in check. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, you're right. It typically is a yin yang, where there's more like the visionary, and then there's maybe like the operational, COO type.
Yes.
But in either case, when I say coachable, I'm talking about someone that really wants that sort of outside opinion on what has worked and what hasn't worked. So they're not reinventing the wheel. It's hard to start a business. It's hard to get that sort of first couple of years off the ground, and without the lessons learned from a prior founder or a prior operator, I think it's very difficult for a founder to think they can do it on their own.
I'm curious, as you were coming up, if you will, you and your partner, were you able to find mentors who were willing to coach you? And which one of you is the humble one, and which one of you is that visionary?
I would say we're both humble and we're both visionaries. I know that's not the answer maybe you were looking for, but I will tell you that we would not be successful or where we are today without the mentors that helped us at every step along the way. We probably had 3 or 4 mentors that guided us at key stages of our business, whether it was members of our private equity firm on our board, or even before that, when we were more junior in our career, guiding us and shaping us and talking about how important relationships are to your business and your network is to your business. And so, I would say that today we are a product of our mentors.
Very generous of you. And I'm not surprised by your answer, because in the last 25 minutes we've been talking, I can tell you're both brilliant and humble at the same time. So I get that. Congratulations. I can do each of those things, but not in concert. So I may be coming to you for some mentorship. I can do each of them, but one is on Monday and the other is on Tuesday.
Fair enough.
So there is we've been saying this since the beginning of time. We human beings have been saying since the beginning of time, oh my goodness, we are ever evolving. Change is happening faster. The landscape keeps shifting. But when you think about that, in the ever evolving landscape of business and even entrepreneurship, what advice do you have for an aspiring founder or someone who really is looking to make their mark as an entrepreneur inside of a large organization where they really want to create, be a visionary, and make change? How do they, in your opinion, with your advice, make that mark, strike out?
Great question. I think the first thing is find the right partners. We talked a lot about my partner and the success we've had together, whether it's a co-founder, partners on your leadership team, financial partners, whether they're VCs or PE partners. That's the nucleus of the company. And if that's not right, nothing else works. Strategy, vision, culture. So the first thing I would do is make sure you have found the right partner. Because I've heard horror stories of people who've had the wrong partner and how the business went sideways. So that's number one. The second thing is, and I see this when I'm mentoring young founders, I'll use Mark Cuban's quote, sales cures. Sales hides a lot of problems
Oh,
and
that's the
blemishes.
truth. That's the truth.
Yeah. And so if you don't have a really strong focus on sales and marketing and top line revenue, again, nothing else matters. HR and finance, none of that even becomes a thing. So I would say make sure that someone or some group of people are focusing on sales at all times. And the last thing I would say is that, I actually heard this from somewhere as well. Running a business, especially an early stage business, is a game of chutes and ladders. You got to find a way to remain humble during those high points and handle the low points with grace, because it is going to be up and down every single day. And, running a business is not that different than a high performing athlete, where your mindset is just as important as anything else. And if you don't have that mindset where you can handle those tough days with grace and you can get up and go to that next pitch after you've got punched in the face 5 times, it's going to be really hard to keep going. So, and then on the other side, if you start to let too much success get to your head, you're going to make mistakes and you're going to start to falter. So I think you got to be able to think about it from that perspective and have the right mindset, and level yourself every single day.
I love the advice you're giving on the balance, because entrepreneurs do have high highs and low lows, and the humility piece of it during the highs is important. I remember the second business I started in my 20s, I had immediate great success, and like going out and buying expensive cars and artwork, like no joke, a lot. And then year two got really tough and I brought the car back. It was, I would say, immature at the time and didn't have good mentorship. But you see those high highs and those low lows, and you do have to learn how to have that humility there. And just so happy to hear that you're acting as a mentor to others. I received a note yesterday from a young man I had mentored in Texas, who I met as my Uber driver 10 years ago, who's now a professional mentor for a national organization. And he sent me a note just out of the blue telling me how I had changed his life. And I say that with some pride and because it's fresh, but my point being there is the way he approached me when he was my Uber driver is he heard me on a call coaching somebody and he said, I don't have a mentor in my life and I need one. Will you be that person? And I thought it was so brave of him to ask. There are so many people out there that don't have a good mentor, entrepreneurs that want to start and have absolutely no foundation. So the fact that you're doing that, I know is a real gift to a lot of people. So thank you.
I personally get a lot of fulfillment about being a mentor, and I hope that the people that I do mentor feel the same way.
I agree with you. It's incredibly rewarding. And when you get that out of the blue text years later saying, look what I accomplished, and you help spark it, there isn't a better feeling than that, except maybe rum raisin ice cream. That other than that, there isn't a better feeling than that.
I completely agree.
Why, you like rum raisin ice cream too?
It's actually my favorite ice cream.
Is it really? It's my favorite ice cream.
Nice.
Okay, well, that's it. I live in Chicago part-time. You're there. You and I have known that the other one exists for a long time. When I get back to Chicago in May, we are hanging out in a significant way.
Thank you so much for having me on your podcast today, Gary.
You didn't agree to hang out with me, so I'm not sure.
And I look forward to having dinner with you next time you're in town.
Sounds good. You're committed now in front of at least 10 people who will listen to this.
Thank you again. I appreciate it.
Ross, you're awesome. Thank you for agreeing to be here. You've been a great guest. Can you give everybody the address, the web address for your new company so they can check it out?
Sure. It's just origindigital.com.
Ross, thank you again. Everybody who's listening, I hope you got as much out of this podcast as I did. And please subscribe to the Magenta Mix Podcast. You can get this podcast wherever you download podcasts. And we look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Ross, thank you again.
Thank you, Gary.